I just landed after a red-eye flight and was dragging myself past the carousels when a woman stepped into my path, clutching a suitcase as if it was a newborn. "Could you hold this for me? Just for a moment? Please, promise you won't let it out of your sight." Her voice shook like she expected me to bolt with it. I gave her a half smile and raised my hands in surrender. "Sure, I'll keep an eye on it." She exhaled in visible relief, whispered a thank you, and hurried off towards the restrooms. I figured she'd be back in a minute. She wasn't. The suitcase sat by my feet like a dog, waiting for an owner who'd run out for cigarettes 20 years ago. No tag, no name, nothing but a thin ribbon knotted around the handle. 10 minutes passed, then 20. At 35, I was irritated. At 45, I decided that whatever her emergency was, it wasn't mine anymore. I rolled the bag over to the unclaimed luggage section and left it there, imagining some airport worker eventually reuniting her with it. And that should have been the end of it. But when I got home hours later, exhausted, keys still in my hand, the suitcase was sitting in the entryway. Not a duplicate, not something similar, the exact same suitcase. I stood there, staring at it like it might move if I blinked too slowly. Maybe the airport made a mistake. Maybe someone assumed it belonged to me. That explanation was paper thin, but I clung to it. The case looked the same as I remembered. Dark green, almost gray, built like those old hard-shell models, but wrapped in heavy fabric. The ribbon on the handle fluttered slightly in the draft as I shut the door behind me. Still no ID tag, no airline sticker, nothing. The next morning I marched it back to the terminal and left it with the lost and found, hoping that that was that. But when I got home again, it was waiting in the bedroom, propped against my closet door beside my own suitcases, which I hadn't even unpacked yet. That's when the unease started settling in. Someone had to be bringing it back. Someone who knew my name, my address, where I slept. I tossed it into the alley dumpster. I heard it thud against the metal, and for the first time, I felt a small spark of triumph. It was back by evening. I drove it across town to a thrift store and donated it with the speed of a man passing off a curse. It returned the next day, and every time it came back, it felt heavier. Nightmares followed, horrible ones. I'd fall asleep and suddenly I'd be trapped inside the thing, spine twisted, knees jammed under my chin, lungs half crushed. I'd scream, but all I tasted was stale air. I'd wake gasping, drenched in cold sweat, staring at that suitcase sitting perfectly still in the shadows of my room. Then the smell started. Not garbage, not mildew, something raw and rotting, like old meat left in the sun. A dark, greasy liquid began seeping from the zipper, staining the carpet in slow, sticky blotches. I couldn't take another night of this. I needed proof, evidence of whoever kept dragging the damn thing back to me. My parents had a pet camera for their dogs, so I asked if I could store the suitcase at their place for a while. I put it right in their living room, front and center, clearly visible on the camera feed. A day passed, then two. I checked the footage, expecting to see the thing vanish or someone sneaking it out, but the suitcase never moved. A few days later, my parents called. They wanted that suitcase gone. The thing was hogging space in their living room and stinking up the whole house. So I picked it up, brought it home, and shoved it into my garage. I set up a small camera pointed at it, partly for peace of mind, partly because I wasn't sure what else to do. It stayed put this time, thank God, because the smell was truly unbearable. But the dreams only got worse. The most recent one felt hideously real. I was frozen upright, unable to lift a finger, while my skin slipped from my bones. My eyes sagged and melted, and something crawled beneath the surface of my rotting flesh. When I finally awoke, disoriented and weak, I realized I wasn't in my bed. I was standing in the doorway of the garage, sleepwalking, heading straight toward the suitcase. A cold, sharp panic knifed through me. I couldn't bring myself to go near that thing anymore. Even getting close enough to touch the zipper made my throat tighten like I was suffocating. I fled to a hotel for a few days, hoping distance might help. It didn't. At work, my boss stopped at my desk and gently asked if something was wrong. She'd noticed how wrecked I'd been looking. That was all it took. I broke. I told her everything. She asked one simple question. "What's inside the suitcase?" I don't know, I admitted. "It isn't mine. I've never opened it." "You never even checked?" she said, incredulous. "That should have been the first thing you did." It sounded perfectly reasonable when she said it, yet the very idea of opening that bag made my stomach twist violently. Still, she said she wanted to see it, to clear up the mystery. After work, we drove to the hotel together. On the way, she theorized out loud. Maybe someone had set me up. Maybe it was evidence of something horrible and I should have called the police right away. Or maybe it was something harmless. A forgotten frozen turkey. A stupid prank. Some odd misunderstanding. In her eyes, my refusal to open it was absurd. I couldn't argue with the logic, but the thought of touching that zipper felt impossible. When we entered the room, the suitcase was right there beside the door, angled almost politely as if waiting to be opened. The entire room reeked. My boss muttered something under her breath, pinching her nose. She told me to open it. I immediately shook my head, making a strange sound I couldn't control. She sighed, told me to close the door so no one passing by would see anything, then rolled the suitcase into the bathroom. "In case it's messy," my boss said. She also said she'd only crack it open, just enough to get a look. "Where did you say it came from again?" she asked as she tugged at the zipper. I retreated to sit on one of the beds, keeping as much distance as possible. I couldn't see her behind the bathroom door, which was a relief. "Someone at the airport asked me to keep an eye on it. Funny thing though, the only time it didn't come back was when my parents had it. It stayed put for a couple of days. I wonder if, I stopped. She wasn't responding. "Are you looking inside?" I called. Silence. A wave of dread washed over me, thick and paralyzing. My arms and legs felt like they'd been filled with cement. "Did you unzip it yet?" I managed, my voice thin and shaking. A muffled noise answered me, something soft, strangled. Terror jolted me to my feet. I stumbled towards the bathroom and pushed the door open and froze. The tip of her polished loafer was disappearing into the opened suitcase. The bag bulged, shivered, swallowed, and then the zipper slid shut with a wet, final snap. The suitcase sat there, still, ordinary, waiting. After that day, I decided I needed to get rid of the suitcase for good. I carried it to the central bus and train terminal downtown. It felt strangely light now, almost hollow, and it gave off a faint, damp smell, nothing like the overwhelming stench from before. I stood in the middle of the station, scanning the crowd. A mother juggling 2 kids, a dad arguing quietly with his teenage son. And then I saw him, an older man with sun-weathered skin and a tired bucket hat drooping over his eyes. He sat alone on one of the metal benches, looking worn down by life. I walked over, sat beside him, and pretended to read for a moment while my heart hammered. Then I turned and said, "Excuse me, sir. Would you mind keeping an eye on my bag for a few minutes?" He blinked at me, surprised, but shrugged. Yeah, sure. Please don't leave it unattended, okay? Just hold on to it until I get back," I pressed. Yeah, no problem." "Thank you," I said, maybe too quickly. Then I walked away. I never went back. Since then, I've become a person of interest in the investigation into my boss's disappearance. She was last seen riding with me, which doesn't look great on paper. But I don't have nightmares anymore. The feeling of rot is gone. The air around me smells normal again. Maybe you think I'm heartless. Maybe you're right. But before you judge me, ask yourself honestly, what would you have done if you were trapped in the same nightmare? I'm telling this story for one reason, so no one else ends up where I did. If a stranger ever asks you to watch their bag, don't say yes. Don't be polite. Don't hesitate. Just walk away. I know I will. I'll never agree to watch anyone's luggage again.